All right, is everybody ready? We're going to call this meeting to order, and y'all are going to have to bear with me. A little sinus infection over the weekend got my voice.
Chairman England with bottles of water.
That's right. Look, first order of business, before we get going, I'm going to ask Chairman Corbett if he would open us in the word of prayer. What number are you on, John?
3.
Bow with me. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we just come before this afternoon, Lord, just we can know what Jesus know how. Lord, just thank you for this beautiful day you've allowed us to see, Lord. Just ask you just continue to lead, guide, and direct us in everything we do. Be pleased in thy sight. Pray just forgive us where we fail. And all things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, we're going to be on a kind of a tight schedule today as the department, Commissioner Williams and the department have us at 2 and the Senate at 3. So we're going to try to move through this so y'all can get ready for y'all's next meeting also. But committee, if you would, first order of business, would you look in your folder and check out the rules? We're going to need to adopt those. So I would ask if everybody to read through those, and I'll look for a motion to adopt.
I move for adoption. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. They pass. Okay. All right. Next thing I'd like to do is we were going to go through and introduce our new members, but I only had to see one here, Mr. Fry. If you, yeah, if you would, Spencer, just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Y'all, I represent Athens House District 118. I appreciate the opportunity to serve on this committee, and I look forward to
What number? What number?
probably don't need a microphone.
Number 8.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, that's right. That's okay. No, I'm Spencer Fry from House District 118. I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the committee. It's awesome.
Well, we're glad to have you. Just remember, when you're hunting, you're in my district.
Yes, sir.
So you
Percent of the time.
you just remember that. And Jesse Petrie is also a new member, and he called me. He's got to go out of town on business, and Timothy Barr. So with all that being said, I'm going to open the floor to Commissioner Williams and your department. And first off, before we get there, I just want to say thank you to you and all of your staff, not only for what you do for us, but this past year, with what y'all did and experienced with the storm and the relief. I just want to say thank you, and y'all did an amazing job. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I speak for the whole department in thanking y'all as well, and the governor for doing the special session and giving those folks some relief down there. It's great to be here today. It's great to see new members, and I just again want to thank y'all. As a former legislator, y'all have got a lot of work to do, and we appreciate it.
Mr. Commissioner, I hate to interrupt you, but we've got a member that's got to leave a little early, and I promised him I'd let him ask you a question. So, what number?
Yes, we're going to have your fishing tournament.
Okay, this is another one on the same subject, bro. We do have a fishing tournament every year, but that's not it. I've been asked for you to organize a fishing trip for the committee. Somewhere, he
We sure believe in Georgia grown, so it'll be in Georgia.
and I do too. I'm saying, but seriously, we want to take a trip, but we don't know where the fish are, so we want you to tell us.
We will absolutely do that as quick as the weather gets a little prettier. We'll start working on that today.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Y'all
Thanks for that request. That sounds like a good one.
river called Atlantic Ocean that has great stuff.
I'm gonna let y'all argue it out. Y'all,
Mr. Commissioner,
y'all tell
I'm
me
sorry,
what
I
region of
opened
the state you want to fish in, and we'll
I
make it
open the
happen.
door. You get back to your presentation. I'm sorry.
Well, I do have the trout stocking scheduled. So, anyway, thanks again. Y'all got a tough job, and we appreciate y'all taking time to let us come and present today. I want to again thank you. Every time I'm in front of legislators, I thank you for your passing of HB 208. That put us in the middle in Southeast Georgia hunting and license prices. We we have lived up to what we told you we would do this past year and a half. You've got a scorecard in your folder. It looks like this, where we keep internally and audit ourselves as to make sure we're doing what we promised the hunters and fishermen we would do. As you remember, we did probably a year and a half worth of town halls around the state. First question we asked was, will you let us go up? And the second question we asked was, what do you want us to do with the money? And that's what we work from. So we feel we've been very responsive, but certainly if you're hearing anything different in your districts, we need to know that. So we're very proud of the work we've done. Speaking of other handouts, every senator and representative has one of these. We delivered them to your desk today, some of you, and some of we got to see in person. Attached to that is a little gift from a little token from Parks. We encourage you to go see our parks, and you're going to hear from your new parks director soon. But we love, and our employees love to see you come on the park. So please take advantage of that. For instance, I think I grabbed Chairwoman Smith's, but information, for this district, 5,489 hunters just in that district, 2,513 boaters, 8,522 anglers. We stocked 162,000 black bass in that district, 461,000 hybrid and striped bass. So this is good, what I call refrigerator door stuff. It's got local contact information, and when you get asked, what's DNR doing for me in your district, you got 4 or 5 bullets that you can pull out and hand to your constituents. So hopefully that's good information for you. I appreciate the kind words about our hurricane response. We've been pretty active in that for several years now, and certainly were at Michael. We had a video. I could sit here and tell you what we did at Michael, but I think this video does a little better job, so I'll hush and let him back it up to 0.
The days leading up to Irma, we're like every other Georgian. We're watching the news.
Tracking Hurricane Irma as it moves closer to making landfall in the U.S.
They start making their predictions.
Let's get that update on Hurricane Irma.
The sheer, unrelenting force of Hurricane Irma.
Life-threatening storm surge expected.
The afternoon, everything shifting toward the northward and then gradually losing strength.
Irma had an impact statewide. The track kept changing. Part of the DNR's job is to be there before, during, and after the storm. And that's exactly what we did. The most important resource DNR offers during severe weather is our staff and our personnel. We train every day with Mother Nature and her elements, and so we're uniquely qualified to react to these storms.
What those skill sets can mean for responding to an event, whether you be with state parks, with lodging, law enforcement division, wildlife resources division, biologists, technicians in the field.
Our historic preservation division, they have to come in and assess historic assets after these issues. In an emergency, sometimes things can get chaotic, and the leader that we designated may not be there.
And one thing we kept hearing from our personnel was provide better training or more training to be able to better respond.
Critical incident management training is applying incident command system, also allowing staff to play the roles in practical exercises.
We instituted that last year, and we've had over 200 of our employees go through that.
It helps you to put tactical objectives in place so that every responder knows what your objective is for that incident.
So when we have one of these emergencies, we just all come together. So about 72 hours out, the GEMA director will call all the agency heads, and we'll start communicating, and then all our people leaning forward. As DNR and the state agencies prepare for upcoming storms, Georgians are also preparing.
With regard to Georgia's preparation, mandatory evacuation will go into effect tomorrow.
Doors and windows boarded up and sandbags piled high as many are choosing to get out of Irma's path.
The word of that evacuation has spread quickly.
As they're evacuating, we try to give as much information as we can, where the shelters are,
We have 60 state parks and historic sites throughout Georgia. So during Hurricane Irma, Parks Properties housed approximately 11,500 individuals. And then we had an additional 479 that were dry camping with us. So that came close to 12,000 individuals staying at our sites. As far as preparing those shelters, the park managers contacts the local emergency management agency for food items, for bottled water, for diapers, or hygiene products. Make sure that they're fully stocked, clean, functional. One provision that we have found very important is to be able to take care of their pets. All those facilities become pet friendly.
When you're dealing with these storm systems that are massive in nature and statewide in perspective, and then the day comes and the event's here. The flooding along the coast was worse than Matthew, the 1 year prior. We have maintenance facilities, shops, houses, homes, all flooded. Hurricane Irma not only reshapes a lot of your infrastructure, but it reshapes the landscape itself. Where dunes that were 20, 30 feet oceanside were now just cut and eroded away, and you have a new shoreline. So you have docks that are dangling in the air. It's the scene down there after one of these events is amazing, but Mother Nature, as always, teaches us so many different valuable lessons.
GEMA prioritized the reentry effort, but we're the tip of the spear. We send our debris teams, they're 8-man teams. The equipment we use through reentry is a lot of the same equipment we use on a daily basis. We use our air assets, our helicopters. Pilots get up to assess the damage from the air and direct our teams where they need to be. So we have big trucks, our law enforcement section. Every ranger has a four-wheel drive, a boat, chainsaws, ropes. So we clear from white line to white line, getting the roads passable and just cover as much ground as we can, usually working 12-hour shifts.
Your local police department, sheriff's department, are your first responders there on the scene. So if it's water or woods, our officers are always the best to respond to that.
One of the greatest things that I saw throughout any of our response effort is a teamwork.
I'm really blessed that I lead an agency that has troops that are so flexible.
Thank you for our personnel, the department as a whole. Even though we've got different divisions, collectively we come together and work seamlessly as one department.
Sort of just the same situation with Michael, how we respond, and I just publicly want to thank my staff and all our folks. They go to college to do a job, a technical job, but in these emergencies they come together to help Georgians, so I'm very proud of them. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I want to call up our different division directors, let them give you a little rundown of what they've been doing since the last time we met, and I'll start with Doug Haymans, who is Director of Coastal Resources Division.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, this is my first opportunity to join you as this illustrious group, and I do appreciate the time. Representative Bruce, we're talking about fishing. I hope you remember all those fine times you had on the coast with us and the crab that are down there. And being with this young lady and her first redfish, I still use her picture with her first redfish standing next to one of the most staunch Republicans of all of Chatham County, and together, redfish is the unifying force, right?
Right.
So we all need to go do more fishing and less of this, right? I am going to run through very quickly. I'm even going to set myself a timer. Try to give you a 6-minute overview of Coastal Resources Division, hopefully in some slides. I threw some very brief comments at the bottom about the resources that we have: 500,000 acres of estuary, 368,000 acres of marsh, and on and on. We're blessed on the Georgia coast to have the resources that we have, And the Coastal Resources Division is the agency that you and the governor have charged with managing those coastal resources. We do that with a mission statement that is to balance, and I'll emphasize the word balance, the coastal development, protection of the coast natural assets, social, cultural heritage, and recreational resources for the benefit of not only you, but also for future generations. When you think about a balance, you think about a fulcrum. There's a point there in the middle, right? And so we're that point in the middle trying to do the balance. But the analogy I've used many times in the last year is I feel more like it's a vice than a balance because I'm getting squeezed from both sides. But it is a very interesting challenge. We manage those resources through the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act, the Shore Protection Act, our revocable license authority. We manage federal consistency through the Coastal Management Program, and we manage our saltwater and commercial and recreational fisheries through Title 27 of the Game and Fish Code. The chart on the right, I don't expect you to be able to read. It just simply sort of shows you the 60-person team that we have at Coastal Resources. We consider ourselves small but complicated. 60 folks in a big division in DNR's terms, but we do an awful lot in that with those 60 folks. And right now we're about 54, so we got a few openings. I'm going to walk through 3 slides each of our 2 major sections, beginning with coastal management. Coastal management is broken into several projects or programs, the first being coastal and ocean management. We're very proud of this program. This is its 20th anniversary year. And in the first 20 years, we've successfully competed for over $45 million in federal grants, 20 million of which we have handed right back out to the coastal community in the form of community wetlands grants or research grants. Through this program, we also do our water quality monitoring and our wetlands assessment. Many things fall under the umbrella of the coastal and ocean management. We also do compliance. That's looking at unauthorized activities. We manage our marina leases or our derelict and abandoned vessels all through our compliance program. I gave Marsh and Shore Management its own slide because this is probably the largest, most visible unit of coastal management, and these are the permitters. These are the folks that if you want to do something that is ocean side or marsh side, be it a private recreational dock, a community dock, a marina, or a beach crossover, you're going to interact with these folks. And so that's just a list of the activities over the last 7 years that they've been involved in. I would ask you to pay particular attention to the revocable licenses at the bottom, and for that, the very bottom number is the number of private recreational docks that we issue each and every year. Private recreational docks are exempted from the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act, but their cumulative impact is far greater than any of the other coastal marshlands protection permits that we do issue in the form of community or commercial docks. But that's an awful lot of activity for what winds up being a 4 to 5 person unit each and every year. And finally, our shellfish program is sort of an odd nut in that it's under the coastal management rather than our commercial fisheries, but that really has more to do with funding than anything else. We currently have 2 full-time persons and 3 half-time people who operate the shellfish program for 17 commercial leases and over 100 individuals that are involved in that program. I've got a slide toward the end that shows you a little more about shellfish, but right now it's about 1.8 million pounds of product each and every year, and about 90% of that is made up of the clam industry. Marine fisheries, this is 3 of our projects within marine fisheries. Research and surveys is the largest. That's about 12 people in that unit. And that's the typical life history work that you would hear us talk about, be it aboard the research vessel Anna or any of our net boats where we're constantly out surveying and researching our commercial and recreational fisheries. We also build coastal boat ramps and fishing piers. We have about 42 of those in the 11 coastal counties that we manage. And we're also involved in habitat restoration and enhancement. That's offshore and inshore reefs, as well as trying to restore shellfish reefs, oyster reefs inshore. We do an awful lot of surveys for both commercial and recreational fishermen. This is as important as the biological data is to find out how much effort is out there, both in recreational and commercial fishing. And you look at that top graph, you'll see that overall, there's a continuing growing trend of recreational, that's a recreational slide, of recreational anglers. That's the red slide. Although it bounces around quite a bit, there's about 235,000 saltwater anglers in the state, and their number of trips is approaching 1 million each and every year. Number of charter fishermen is below that in red, and the number of trips that they take, and you can see the overall trend is that there are just more people fishing, which is a good thing. They spend on average about $239 million a year taking those roughly million fishing trips. And if you look just at the residency there, you'll see where the folks are from. Of course, most are coastal. About 20% are from out of state. So. Our commercial fisheries, I just threw out the top three, and you realize after you get in a room and you look at it on the screen that, well, maybe you can't always read the slides as well as you'd like to. The basic on the left there, you see the green line is the number of pounds of shrimp that are landed in the commercial fishery each year, and you'll see a slight decline. And that's not because the resource is going down, but it's because the number of trawlers is going down. If you look at the red at the bottom, we've seen a steady decline over the years in the number of trawlers. That's mostly, there's my 6 minutes, my apologies. One more minute and I'll wrap up. Price of fuel, price of insurance, price of everything's gone up on the trawlers, so the number of trawlers has gone down as well. The middle one is blue crabs. The far side is shellfish. You'll see the red line, and again, that's the clams, and that illustrates just how important clamming industry is to shellfish. The final slide then is just our budget. On the left is the fact that about 62% of our budget comes from non-state sources. We've been as high as 72% of that, but we're with increase in license revenue, which we are greatly appreciative of. That number has gone up a little bit on the state side, but we are beholden to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration on a lot of accounts because you see that they take up over 33% of our budget. The right slide is just simply how it's broken out, and again, the blue text doesn't translate very well. And that's all of our particulars, how you can get a hold of us if you want the rest of the hour presentation. It just got cut in 7 minutes. So, tag sales. We are, again, very appreciative of the fact that 2 years ago, you guys passed legislation which allowed us to get this most beautiful tag. I'll say it, it's the most beautiful tag in the state. It took us a while to get rolling, but we are about $10,000 a month. You know, it's primarily on the coast that's buying them, but it's selling, I don't know the exact number that we're up to, but we've gotten about 162,000 off of about 16 months of sales, so it's working out quite well.
That's great. Hold on one second. Representative Al Williams has a question.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. A quick question. I looked around the room, and I don't know anybody else here long enough to remember the golden years of oyster harvesting on Georgia's coast. But I remember before we got so sophisticated, we needed them on the half shells, when you could get all the oysters you want. Where are we, particularly first with the traditional oyster harvesting, and then the aqua that's in the make? Secondly, the years of the 1 hour a bushel blue crabs long gone. How are we on the blue crab harvesting? How did it look this past season?
So first, wild harvest of oysters is but a blip, and it will most likely remain but a blip. There's a lot of work involved in harvest of wild oysters, and the market is almost exclusively in backyard oyster roasts. It's not the restaurant market for those, which is why aquaculture has been brought up multiple times. And my understanding is there's a bill that is nearing completion that we hope to be able to react to. I will tell you that of all of our fisheries that we regulate, shellfish is the most important in regards to human health. It's the only seafood that well, you think about sushi, but there's not a whole lot of sushi product that comes from Georgia. It's the only product that we harvest in the southeast United States that's consumed raw, and it's one of the few that you can die from pretty quickly for certain individuals. So we are very concerned about what the legislation may say, and the fact that we were able to regulate that as we need to. Ultimately, we are the ones that are on the water with the regulation. Department of Ag is on the hill. Once it gets to the plant, we need to work cooperatively together. And I told you earlier that we've got 2 full-time individuals. If this program goes the way I know that you would like it to go, and several others, it's going to take some effort. As far as blue crab, so we had the tremendous die-off back in '99 through 2003. We've never come back from that. We are, I think, at a steady state of about 3 million pounds a year, thereabouts. There's about 128 licensed crabbers. About 80 of those are full-time, which is that number of full-time crabbers has remained the same for a couple of decades. It's the folks who truly want to be in it. But we'll never get back to the numbers we were in the 90s because we don't have any picking plants left. So all the product goes to live bushel market.
Thank you. One more question. Chairman Corbett has a question, then we're gonna move on to the next presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of years ago, our Natural Resources Committee was over in Savannah and went out on a shrimp boat, and they caught some shrimp, and then some of them had a black
gill.
What's the status on that? Do you have an update?
So the research is ongoing through a partnership with us and the Skidaway Institute of Oceanography. My chief of marine fisheries, Dr. Carolyn Belcher, and the project lead at Skidaway have been in discussions as to what we've learned to this point and whether it needs to be continued. There's nothing we can do about black gill. It is a naturally occurring ciliate that's always out there. It doesn't affect the shrimp itself as far as taste goes. Once you've had the shrimp, nobody knows it's had black gill. It has some associated mortality with it in the wild. But being able to understand it, where it comes from, is important. But ultimately, it doesn't help us with regard to the shrimp itself.
Thank
you. If you like water, better if you eat some.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
I'll call on Dr. Trask now from Historic Preservation. Representative Williams, we have the best bait oysters in the world. They're just hard to pick, and they don't look good on the plate right now. And so we're very excited about the aquaculture. As Doug said, as the regulating agency for that, we just want to make sure we measure twice and cut once and get it right, because as he said, it's consumed raw. But we look forward to the legislation and hope that, it makes its way through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our office, the Historic Preservation Division, really came about as a result of something called the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. This was passed by Congress largely at the behest of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. If you'll think back in the 1950s and early 1960s, federal agencies were going into the states and executing these big projects. Think about the interstate highway system, those awful residential towers that HUD would destroy entire blocks of historic downtowns to build, that sort of thing. And so the U.S. Conference of Mayors went to Congress, and one of the outcomes of that lobbying effort was a very important measure in this act, which requires federal agencies to consult with our office as to the nature of their undertakings, as they're called in the code, that might affect historic resources, be they historic buildings or archaeological sites or historic landscapes. The act also set up something called the National Historic Preservation Program, and one component of that are the state historic preservation offices. So every state and territory has a SHPO or SHPO, as we are often called. Our mission is to promote the preservation and use of historic places, and I always emphasize that word use. We don't save and preserve historic resources just because they're old and pretty. We preserve them because they can perform a valuable function in our society, be that function economic or scientific or social. In order to accomplish that mission, we have 27 full-time staff. We're the smallest division in the agency. Those are broken into two sections, historic resources and our archaeology, education, and outreach section. This is our budget, about $3.4 million, almost evenly divided between federal and state fund sources. And now I'll just touch on some of the major programs that we administer as part of that National Historic Preservation Program. Most of you have probably heard of the National Register. The National Register essentially is a list of the most important historic places in a state. There's a very sort of complicated and long drawn out vetting process that goes through, that a property goes through in order to be listed on the National Register. It involves our office, a advisory board here in Georgia, and the National Park Service. But it really is the keystone program for our office. Every other program that we administer touches the National Register program. One important caveat about the National Register, there's a common misconception out there that either it restricts property rights or it confers some protection on a listed building. Neither of those things is true. You could get a building listed on the National Register tomorrow and demo it the next day, and there would be no adverse effect coming out of that. It is simply a good housekeeping stamp of approval, essentially, from SHPO and the NPS. We administer one of the more robust tax incentive programs in the country. The federal government offers an income tax credit of 20% for the rehabilitation of historic properties that are going to be income producing. So think a project like Ponce City Market, which was a project that we coordinated several years ago. The state offers an income tax credit of 25% of your rehabilitation expenses, and the counties actually freeze your property taxes for, I believe it's 9.5 years at the pre-rehab rate, after which the rate comes back up to market in a period of years. The state income tax credit is available to both income producing and non-income producing, so a lot of homeowners take advantage of that state program. I will say we have not made a systematic survey of this, but just sort of looking over the Georgia camera-ready communities that are actively participating in that program with the film industry, most of those use our tax credit program pretty intensively for obvious reasons. We've got a study coming out of Georgia Tech in the next 30 days, which is a very, very focused study on our state credit program. I'm still a field science guy at heart, so facts and hard numbers are very important. But I think that study is going to have some pretty good things to say about the efficiency of the return to the state's coffers of this program. Section 106 review is that mandated federal review process that I mentioned at the outset. Federal agencies are required to talk to us as to the nature of their undertakings, as they're called. Those undertakings can range from the license of a cell tower by the FCC all the way up to and including the Savannah Harbor Deepening Project, which was a project that I spent about 17 years of my career on here at DNR, which ultimately involved the raising of a Confederate shipwreck at the bottom there. Over on the archaeology, education, and outreach side of the house, I'll just touch on several of our major program areas there. We spend a lot of time and effort in both sections, actually, supporting our land managing divisions, Parks and Wildlife Resources Division. Also, about 25 to 30 years ago, several federal laws were passed having to do with consultation with federally recognized Native American tribes for federal agencies and state agencies like ours that receive federal funds. That is becoming a very, very important part of our role in DNR. We are the lead for the agency in Native American consultations. As an anthropologist, it's probably the most rewarding and sometimes the most challenging part of our job. And then we also partner with universities, both in-state and out-of-state. They conduct archaeology field schools on properties that we manage. The graduate students get great field experience. We get great data that we can use to manage and interpret those resources. Our Certified Local Government Program is a partnership between local jurisdictions, our office, and the National Park Service. In order to become a CLG, a local jurisdiction passes a preservation ordinance, and then they impanel a commission to administer that ordinance. This gives them access to federal pass-through grants, which are very popular, although they're very small, and enhanced technical assistance from our office. But the most important thing about the CLG program, the biggest benefit, is that it gives local folks an additional planning tool in their toolbox so that they can help control what happens in their downtowns. I'm very proud of the fact that we have the most active CLG program in the country. We have 98 right now, which is more than any other state. And then we work quite closely with our regional commissions around the state as well. Finally, I'll wrap up. We're real proud of the fact that Georgia SHPO was the first SHPO in the country to have an African American Heritage Preservation Program. This started way back in 2000. This is a technical assistance program, so typically what we will do is have some of our folks go into a local community, help them identify historic resources that they want to rehabilitate and put back into active use, and then we'll figure out how to help them make that happen. And then finally, we administer something called the Centennial Farms Program, which is probably one of the most enjoyable programs from my personal perspective. This is a national program. We started participating back in '93. The program recognizes family farms that have been in the same hands for 100 years or longer. So far, we've honored more than 500 farms throughout Georgia. And if you're interested, we have an annual awards ceremony. This year will be on October 4th down at the Georgia State Fair. And our partners, the Department of Ag, Georgia Forestry, and the Farm Bureau will all be there. I'm sure Commissioner Black will come down and talk to the group as he usually does. And with that, I'll hush up and take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Kress.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Our new division directors, Doug Haymans. We actually have three. Jeff Cowan is now the director of parks. You'll hear from him in a little bit. And our next speaker is Colonel Thomas Bernard, who leads our law enforcement division.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to throw it out there. It's kind of tough getting in this seat with this gun belt on, but yeah. Yeah. I may be taking the seat with me when I get up. Yeah. Yeah. Just want to throw it out there. If you decide to go on that fishing trip, it's always good to have the colonel with you. Yeah, that way there's you're not interrupted with a license check by a game warden, right? Just saying. We'll start with the presentation on that question there. How about that? All right, there we go. So we are the oldest state law enforcement agency. We were founded in 1911. A lot of folks don't know that, so we go back well in time. Our core duties are, of course, what you think about when you think about a warden: hunting, fishing, boating, the environmental piece, all of our DNR controlled properties, and that's parks and WMAs as well. And then we conduct search and rescues. Last year we had 375 annually, and a lot of those rescues can run from a day to 2 or 3 weeks, from lost persons missing on the water. So that gets really labor intensive. And when I talk about this, think about the number that we have. That's 226 statewide sworn folks that do this day in and day out. We also teach education classes across the state in our schools, and last year we had over 2,000 programs where we reached out to our young folks talking about our natural resources. So who do we impact out there the most? And, these are our licensed dollars that come back to us, and that's a little over 1 million anglers in Georgia, 640,000 people that hunt in Georgia, and then we have 335,000 registered boats as well here in Georgia. So we have a lot of land to cover with those 226 folks. When you look at our 64 state parks, 138 WMAs, 10 public fishing areas, and then you combine the private lands that we patrol from landowner complaints, trespassing complaints. We got a little over 37 million acres that we patrol as well. So a lot of ground to cover, and that's why I talk about community involvement and how important that is, and that our community, our good citizens, our hunters and fishermen that know their local warden, they are our eyes and ears out there for us. Also, our waterways. We patrol 16,000 miles of rivers, 500,000 acres of impounded waters, and that's like Lake Lanier or Sinclair. Those are your lakes. 100 linear miles of coastal shoreline, and we often go out 200 miles offshore, and that's generally with the feds on a joint enforcement agreement when we do those patrols. So with the water comes obviously our drownings that we work each year. Last year we recovered 55 drowning victims. We also get called upon by our local sheriff's department looking for guns and different things that are thrown into lakes and rivers as well. And so this technology that we have these two types of boats you see in the upper right. This is a specialized pontoon boat with this equipment. We have one in the north and one in the south. The big piece down to the right is called a side scan sonar. So if we have a large search area, that thing is deployed behind the boat. As we confine that search down, the middle picture, it looks almost like a Doppler radar. That's called a sector scan. And it's got about a 60-foot swath, very defined, and we can see things actually down in the sediment with that as well. But once we locate a target, the bottom left picture is what we call a remote operated vessel, and that thing is ran off of a joystick. So if you've got a 22 or 23-year-old game warden, they do really well with it. Someone like myself does not do well with it. But we swim that down and look at the target, and that's when we send our divers down with that. So when you look at our people, number one, I think we got the best people in state government. There's no doubt about that. Our unique skills and equipment. I think we become the most versatile peace officer in the world. And I think you see that in our response to Southwest Georgia, all of DNR as a whole. It's just unbelievable at the sheer willpower, the dedication, They've got the equipment to do it, and they don't mind getting dirty, and they get the work done. Teamwork, we also, outside of our core duties, this is where we work with the other state agencies, from body recovery team with the GBI, our child abduction response team, counterterrorism task force, and then the governor's drug task force as well. So all of those are manpower issues at times when they come about, just like the Super Bowl. We had 30 officers dedicated to that. That was an 11-day deployment. And then in the middle of that, Stone Mountain called. They had, the potential protest up there. So you got to always be able to be diverse in what you do as a state law enforcement officer and as a warden. Talked about public education, and this is what I call the community involvement piece, where it's so important. We're talking to those kids in those areas, and they learn what we do. They feel comfortable coming up to our folks and talking to them, and that, of course, goes back to the families that they're from as well. Again, 226 statewide. Those are our regions that are broken down. We'll have a captain over each region, and we're paramilitary in structure. They have lieutenants and sergeants underneath them there. Our training academy, and I think Representative Barr was there last week, so he got to enjoy some defensive tactics time with some of our folks. But it's 23 weeks. Once they get through that, and that includes the regular post-mandate training, they have 6-month probationary time where they're with the field training officer to make sure that they're doing what we ask them to do by our policies and procedures. So this is what it costs for us to hire, equip, and train a new warden. A lot of money. So our recruitment is a big piece on that to make sure we've got the right person for the right fit. But that's the cost to get them through the academy there. So this was huge, and a big thank you to everybody in the room. This was pre-House Bill 208. We had 43 counties without a resident game warden, and this is off of our license increase sales was 1.7 million. We combined 2 post classes. That's why you see 2 game warden academies. Hired 32. And this is what it looks like today as I speak. We've got 10 vacant counties, 2.7 million in 208 funds, and we hope to hire the additional 10 here starting in May. So we'll have a game warden in every county in the state of Georgia, even with some of the retirements that we have. That's always a moving target there, but we'll be up to full force at that point in time. So that's a huge thank you. We had game wardens there for a while that had 2 and 3 counties by themselves, and you can imagine, and that's 24/7. They're getting called out and working those counties, and it gets to be pretty tough. So this is our funding. This is what it looks like on our funding piece there in the yellow. That's our actual federal dollars. That's our boating money that we receive from the Coast Guard. In the green there, that talks about our general funding with our license revenue, which is a little over 12 million. And then the other, that small portion up there, that's where we actually have restitution money, federal grant money as well. So what motivates is probably what motivates all of us, or it should, and that's our next generation. Spending time with them, talking about how important our resources are, and what each division brings to the table for DNR. Any questions? Yes.
You're saying thank you, but I saw one red county before I say you're welcome.
Okay.
Just happened to be a coastal county, a little fine county called Liberty.
Yes, sir.
And I'm wondering why we still red. And
so you're not.
Do I have to put on my new uniform?
No, you're good. You're good.
Somebody.
I've got an answer for you.
All right, sir.
She's in the academy right now.
Yes, sir.
And so as soon as she gets out, her last name is Hamrick, and she's going to Liberty County. So that's why that county's it's still showing red. She's not out on the road just yet. So.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You talked about the diversity of our DNR law enforcement. Could you touch on briefly your involvement with this past weekend Super Bowl?
Yeah, so that's we got the request from the World Congress Center probably about 6 months ago. I originally committed 20 to that. That's something you got to look at statewide, what's going on, because we got to leave folks back to handle what our core duties are. So our folks were working underneath the World Congress Center, and they had posts that they were on outside of that checking credentials just like any other officer was doing. As we got closer and the federal shutdown occurred, requests came in and said we need additional people. So I had to send an additional 10 officers, and they were a part of a long gun team. Probably may have seen them out there with their rifles. So they fulfilled different roles during that venue, but that was up underneath the World Congress Center. Yes, sir.
That was good.
Thank you.
Chairman Barr.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Colonel. I did get the opportunity to be pushed around by your guys over the weekend, and it was a lot of fun, and it was amazing to see everything they go through. I know when I came in a couple of years ago, we had probably the lowest game warden ratio per capita. Where do we stand now in the Southeast? Where do we stand now on that in the Southeast?
If you look at it to the number of citizens, we average about one game warden for 50,000 citizens if you look at it from that. In the Southeast, I don't know what the total number is, but I would say we are probably now definitely within the top 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a huge increase with those
Great.
numbers now. I think Florida exceeds us, and just because they get a lot of federal dollars down there and what they do, but we're in a lot better shape than our agencies that touch us.
Good. Well, I appreciate what y'all do.
Thank you.
I kind of think of y'all as the state SWAT team. Y'all are everywhere when there's a hot spot.
I got you. Thank you.
And just I'm very grateful. Quietly serve, grab your chainsaws or whatever y'all need, your fire rake. So
Right.
thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. No.
Okay, so it's 1 per 50,000.
Yes, ma'am.
So in the red in Fulton County, we can really get how many?
I knew you were going there. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we'll take a look at
In the
that.
one
Yeah.
city, we have
Sure,
100,000.
I know.
So, and that's not
And it-
even Atlanta.
That's right, in the Chattahoochee River too.
And see,
Yeah.
it runs down
That's
in
right.
my district. I go across Chattahoochee to go
I
to
got you.
Douglas County.
We'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay,
Yeah.
please do.
We
Yeah,
will.
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Colonel. You said it's $152,000 and $185
Yes, sir.
to train a warden. How's our retention rate? Are we retaining?
We are. The only time you see someone leave our agency, and when I say that, that goes back to the leadership that's sitting to my right there, not just because he's in the room, but when you got folks that care about their people, they're going to stay. Bottom line, they're going to stay. And so the only time we see people leave us is if they go to the feds. And when we talk to them, that was something that they had wanted to do at the very beginning, and they worked towards that. And so that, I think it's definitely maybe 2 to 3%. And again, that's only when they're hiring. We just lost one of my undercover officers to ATF, and that's where he had been trying to go his entire career. Spent 15 years with us. And so we got our money out of him, but you know that was his ultimate goal. So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. I was just going to tell Commissioner we've got 10 minutes. Go ahead, make it quick.
I was trying to get your attention. I had a diversity question a little earlier, and a very liberal representative from Douglas. I thought he was going to ask it for me. But since there's such a high percentage of African Americans in this meeting, I want to know what's your breakdown? What's your numbers of African American game wardens and women?
Okay, so in African American, I'll have 2, and so I'm putting the committee together. I already have on that recruitment piece there. For the women, I had 4 in the academy. I'm down to 3. Once she just decided this wasn't for her, and then outside of that, I have 4 additional across the state. So minority recruitment, when I came in, I looked at that and said, this is one of our top priorities. So I have a major that's over that, and he's going to be looking into that. And we have Joe Tauber now there at the training center, and that's a piece that he's going to work on as well as a priority.
I'd like to meet the major in Strawberry sometime, because some of us can give him some help.
Sure.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Jeff Cowan, our new Parks Director. Not real new right now.
You did.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good to be here today to talk to you about state parks. I'm going to try to go through this quick because I understand we short time. This is our mission and vision. I'm not going to read through this today, but basically we're here to protect the natural beauty of Georgia, the history, keep the integrity of our history, while providing opportunities for us all to recreate at these state parks and historic sites. This is sort of what we have in our system. We have 48 state parks, 14 state historic sites, 8 golf courses. Our system includes 396 cottages, 28 camper cottages, yurts, 55 group shelters, 41 campgrounds, 14 group camps, 5 lodges with conference centers, 50 miles of hiking, biking, nature canoeing, and equestrian trails on over 84,000 acres of property. And as you look at the map there, which I know you can't see it real close, but we are spread all the way across the state with our facilities and sites. We're thriving in state parks. We had over 9 million visitors last year that had an economic value of over $911 million and close to 8,700 local jobs through our park system. And this goes even higher when we include our lodge parks. History surrounds us. We have 14 historic sites around the state. These historic sites are all across from the mountains to the middle of the state, a lot along our coast. I won't read them all, but this is Fort King George up on the left, Fort Morris on the right, Reynolds Mansion on Sapelo, bottom left, and this is FDR's Willie Carr and the museum at Little White House. A thing we're putting on next Sunday, I thought was opportunity here, is a free museum Sunday, sort of super museum after Super Bowl. But all our museums at our sites are free this Sunday to come and visit. And, you know, hopefully some of y'all can get out and see them. And again, this is the Willie Carr in the Little White House Museum. Find your perfect spot. We have, fall of last year, we introduced site-specific camping and where you can rent a specific site up to 13 months in advance if you want to be on a lake view at a campsite. All our parks will be online by June of this year. Most people are loving it. We have a few distractors that said, wow, you know, I used to could go get whatever I wanted now, but they just got to go to the system and find that site. We've added a new campground to our system in fall of 2018, Dames Ferry on Lake Juliet. Thanks to Georgia Power for letting us run this park for them. We're actually doing a ribbon cutting this Friday on the reopening, and all total we got over 2,400 camping sites available statewide. Oh, we always, let's see, okay, here we go, cabin yurts. We have 396 cabins at 30 sites across the state, 28 camper cabins at 4 sites, and 39 yurts. You know, so you can, whatever you want. You want the very luxurious, like on the left at Fort McAllister, or you want to stay in a yurt at Fort Yargo. I like it. I like it, Representative. It's a great one. We've always got something new to try: archery, biking, boating, disc golf, fishing, golfing, hiking, swimming, foot golf. We have clubs: Tales on Trails Walking Club, the Canyon Climbers, Muddy Spokes, which is a running group, park paddlers. We got tree climbing at Panola Mountain. We got wild cave tours at Cloudland. We have got zip lining at 2 of our lodge parks up in the mountains. Always something to take on at the parks. Social media, almost 300,000 followers on Facebook, 48,000 on Instagram, 12,000 on Twitter. Questions? Sorry I went through that fast, but trying to save a little bit of time.
No, thank you very much. That was. Anybody have questions?
So on the online rollout where you can reserve, just in general, how does that work, and what is are they all reserved, or can I still come up and there's a section that I can get over the weekend without going to the site?
Well, they're all reserved, but if there's any left over, you sure can always, if there's any there, but I would look on the reservation or call the park and make sure there was something available, and we'll always put you on a camping site if it's not full.
No, it's got yours.
That's called glamping. Glamping, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I am very proud of what Jeff does. They chop a lot of their own wood in state parks, and they operated about anywhere from 80, high 70s to low 80s self-sustainable year in and year out, which is incredible, really. Next, we'll have Rusty Garrison from Wildlife Resources Division.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Rusty Garrison, Wildlife Resources Division. Any questions? I'm going to go quick. You have at your desk our mission statement, our goals, our values, and our motto. So I'm not going to go through our mission statement that's here. Our structure, I think you're aware. I do want to point out we have game management, fisheries management, and wildlife conservation. That is a change that you may or may not be aware of. It was non-game conservation section. Now we are wildlife conservation section. We changed that a few years back. I'm going to skip the funding, go straight to this page here. We manage more than 500,000 acres of public water, 16,000 miles of streams, and 1 million acres of land. That's our 350 folks have all of that. That's 105 WMAs. It's a little bit different from the Colonel's numbers because that's just state-owned lands that we have that I'm mentioning here. 11 public fishing areas. It's 11. We just added a new one. I had to correct my PowerPoint this morning, actually. 10 fish hatcheries, 152 boat ramps, regional ed centers, shooting ranges, as well as archery ranges, and the state's threatened and endangered species. So a whole bunch of stuff that we've got going. And then, again, just some of the management. It's all from sport fish wildlife restoration funds for game and fish. The bulk of our funding comes from license sales and that federal excise tax on guns, archery equipment, and fisheries equipment. Wildlife conservation is funded a little differently. We get $900,000 from the state. We get other funds from wildlife license plates. Weekend for Wildlife that's coming up next weekend. Love to have all of you come down for that, and especially Saturday night. You can even bid for things online sitting here. You don't have to be there. Spend your money. We can encourage you to do that. State income check off, and then other donations and federal grants. So about a $20 million budget. Only $900,000 comes from state funds on that. This is what I really wanted to get to. I want to thank you. You've heard it multiple times. House Bill 208 was great for us. We increased our license fees from $9 to $15 for hunting and fishing license. For $65, you've got a whole year access to all that I just outlined. That's the price of a movie ticket for you and your spouse and a dinner out. And you get it for a whole year. And y'all did that. And the two big areas were access and habitat management, and that's what we focused on, and I'm just reporting out for you here. We've got fishing piers, restrooms, paved parking lots now, boat ramps, new boat ramps. We added Silver Lake as a PFA. That's the new one. Now we have 11. Power at some of our, that's the light that you see there, so that we can add night fishing on our PFAs and some of our public waters, just more access, and then upgrades to our fish hatcheries. And then finally, for game management, just a couple of statistics that you see there. 195 miles of new roads on WMAs. We're opening the gates. We're maintaining and improve 403 miles of existing roads. We've added 223 acres of waterfowl habitat, 951 acres of mourning dove, and all of that with our staff there. Finally, we have increased our technical assistance program for private lands, and so we're adding staff to be able to deal with private landowners. And then we've enhanced 4 different shooting ranges statewide. Also at your table is the non-game annual report that we need to give to you to report out there, and you've got access to that. I gave you a handout with all of this information and more. Please look it over, and thank you for House Bill 208. I can't thank you enough, and our people can't thank you enough. We needed it. Wow, that was 2 minutes. There we go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rick. A couple things. I just want to say, can we get a copy of this? Since we rushed through, we may want to go back and look at it. And second off, I know, and Chairman Knight will probably attest to this too, but our biggest fear after we passed 208 was for us not to do what we said we were going to do. And I just want to commend y'all for everything that you've done. You've done more than you said we were going to do, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Y'all seen a lot of big numbers. Sometimes they're hard for me to grasp, but hunters and fishermen in Georgia spend over $5.2 million a day. That's a little easier to grasp than some of these annual numbers. And that number keeps going up, according to revenue.
Yeah.
Well, we thank y'all, and I'm sorry we got rushed here.
Yeah, I
too,
kind of
man.
skipped through those slides.
I know y'all
The
gotta
revenue
be
for Georgia that Hunting brings in is almost it's 977 million, almost $1 billion, and then $1.3 billion in retail sales for fisheries. So almost $2 billion in retail sales for hunting and fishing in Georgia.
I would like to get a copy of that to
I'll
get
give it to
everybody, since we had to run
I'll
through it.
reply to your email about this committee and to all, and then copy that.
That
this
would be great.
presentation.
That would be great.
You're welcome.
And
Sorry I
thank
had to
y'all.
go so
Thank
fast.
y'all for y'all's presentation. I guess everybody's got to go, but I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Hey.